In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, January 12th. Tensions are escalating in the Middle East as US and UK military authorities launch strikes against land-based Houthi targets in Yemen in response to the militant group's rampant assaults against commercial ships in the Red Sea. Meanwhile, the US imposes new sanctions on 3 Russian institutions and 1 individual involved in the transfer and testing of North Korean missiles in support of Kremlin's military aggression against Ukraine. South Korea's economic rebound this year will depend on the strength of its exports, but lackluster domestic consumptions and mounting geopolitical tensions are expected to remain as tangible variables to overall growth. American and British military authorities have started strikes against land-based Houthi targets in Yemen in response to the militant group's rampant assaults on commercial ships in the Red Sea. Our Ian Jin starts us off.
U.S. and U.K. naval forces in the Red Sea have launched airstrikes against Houthi rebel targets across Yemen. According to U.S. officials, warship-launched Tomahawk cruise missiles and fighter jets hit more than 12 sites, including the capital Sana'a and the Houthi Red Sea port stronghold of Hodeidah. And the targets included logistical hubs, air defense systems, and arms depots. Just days before the overnight strikes in Yemen, American and British naval forces shot down 21 Houthi drones and missiles fired towards the southern Red Sea, which was the Houthis' largest attack to date in that region. Houthi rebels claim they are only attacking ships linked to Israel or heading to Israeli ports. But during a White House briefing on Wednesday, U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby called the attacks by Yemen-based militants in the Red Sea unlawful and escalatory.
So we'll say it again. These attacks against vessels in the Red Sea pose a direct threat to lives, to freedom of navigation, and to global trade in one of the world's most critical waterways. And despite what the Houthis may say, they are threatening and targeting commercial vessels with ties to countries all over the world, many of which have no connection to Israel whatsoever. These attacks are unlawful, they're reckless, and they are escalatory.
The Houthis have defied calls from the UN and the broader international community to halt their missile and drone attacks on Red Sea shipping routes, as well as warnings from the United States of consequences if they failed to do so. There have been 27 such attacks to date, disrupting international commerce on the key route between Europe and Asia that accounts for about 15% of the world's shipping traffic. The ongoing strikes are one of the most dramatic demonstrations to date of the widening of the Israel-Hamas war in the Middle East since its eruption in October. Ian Jin, Arirang News.
And tensions continue to mount. Iran has laid claim over a US-linked oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman as part of an ongoing feud with Washington over the latter's confiscation of Iranian oil on the same tanker last year. Our Shin Hyong has details.
The Iranian Navy seized an oil tanker, the St. Nicholas, in the Gulf of Oman on Thursday morning local time, according to Iran's state-run Tasnim news agency. The media outlet reported that the action was taken in compliance with an order from an Iranian court and was allegedly in retaliation for the confiscation of the same tanker and Iranian oil by the U.S. last year. According to the BBC, the oil tanker was in transit between the Iraqi port of Basra to its intended destination in Turkey when it was boarded by masked gunmen who ordered that the vessel's course be altered toward an Iranian port. There is believed to be 1 Greek and 18 Filipino nationals aboard as crew members on the Marshall Islands flagged ship. The location of the seizure is the Strait of Hormuz, a vital oil trading route for major oil production countries, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iran, and Iraq. 1/3 of the world's natural gas consumption and 1/6 of the world's oil passes through the region. In response, the White House strongly condemned the action and urged the ship's immediate release.
The Iranian government should immediately release the ship and its crew. These provocative and unacceptable actions need to stop. We'll continue to work with our allies and partners to deter and confront the full range of Iran's concerning and destabilizing behavior in close coordination, of course.
Iran has previously warned of a strong response to the conflict in Gaza, as well as the assassination of a Hezbollah leader and airstrikes on Iran-linked facilities in Syria. And with attacks by Yemen's Houthi rebels on ships passing through the Red Sea, the capture of the St. Nicholas is expected to further intensify tensions in the region. 신하영, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, 3 Russian institutions and 1 individual have been included on Washington's blacklist of sanctions for their role in making available North Korean weapons for use in Ukraine. Our Kim Jong-sil has the latest.
The U.S. State Department has imposed sanctions on 3 Russian entities and 1 individual involved in the transfer of North Korean ballistic missiles to Russia, which then used them against Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a statement on Thursday, said North Korea's transfer of ballistic missiles to Russia supports Moscow's war of aggression, increases the suffering of the Ukrainian people, and undermines the global non-proliferation regime. He added that the U.S. continues to closely monitor any Russian-provided support to North Korea in return for these weapons and will use all available tools to designate and expose individuals and entities involved in the arms transfers. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Zelensky said Thursday that Russia has received over 1 million pieces of ammunition from North Korea. Speaking to reporters in the Estonian capital Tallinn during a tour of the Baltic region, he called for more support from Western allies to defend against Russian missiles and drone strikes. The Russian deputy head of the Security Council gave a chilling warning on the same day.
It's known that we use different carriers with different loads, except for the nuclear one just yet.
Regarding Wednesday's UN Security Council meeting criticizing Pyongyang-Moscow arms transfers, North Korea released a statement denying the allegations. The regime's state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Friday that North Korean ambassador to the UN, Kim Sung, said Pyongyang doesn't feel the need to comment on America's, quote, unfounded accusations. South Korea's Unification Ministry told reporters on Friday that North Korea has avoided giving a clear denial of the arms transfers. The ministry added that the arms transfers between Russia and North Korea are evident and that they are a violation of UN Security Council resolutions and an illegal act. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
And those very concerns over arms collaboration were also addressed by top diplomats of Seoul and Washington a day earlier. During talks over the phone Thursday evening, Seoul's newly appointed Foreign Minister, Cho Tae-yeol, and his American counterpart, Antony Blinken, condemned the hostile weapons cooperation between North Korea and Russia. They also vowed to respond firmly to threats posed by Pyongyang through bilateral as well as trilateral security efforts, including Tokyo. In other news, as part of efforts to allow for some closure to a painful chapter in history, the top court here has yet again ordered a Japanese company to compensate a Korean victim of wartime forced labor. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Eun-ji reports.
Mr. Kim was taken from his home in Korea to Japan in March 1943 and was forced to work in a mill for Nippon Steel without being paid until he was able to return home in 1946 after Korea gained independence from Japan. He died in 2012, and the family of the late victim filed a suit against the Japanese company in 2015. On Thursday, South Korea's Supreme Court upheld the appellate court's decision, ordering Nippon Steel to pay 100 million Korean won, or about $76,000, in compensation to Mr. Kim's wife and their 2 children. The top court made similar rulings in separate cases in December, ordering Nippon Steel and other Japanese companies, such as Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, to pay as much as 150 million Korean won, or about $111,000 to each victim. But the Japanese companies are likely to continue refusing to pay, and the Korean government is expected to compensate the victims instead, using funds procured through a public foundation. Such a plan was announced earlier this year to improve relations with Japan.
Since last March, following the announcement of our government's plan to resolve the forced labor issue, we have been paying the delayed compensation interest to the plaintiffs through the Foundation for Victims of Forced Mobilization by Imperial Japan. There's no change in our policy to continue making such payments in accordance with ongoing court decisions.
Japanese companies have yet to pay the previously ordered compensation, claiming the statute of limitations has expired. But last month, the top court clarified that this would not be allowed. Pei Eun-ji, Arirang News.
Exports are projected to support Korea's economic rebound this year, but lackluster domestic consumption and mounting geopolitical tensions may hinder growth. Our Moon Hye-ryun has the latest government assessment.
South Korea's economy overall is showing signs of recovery, with sharp growth in exports and more stunted growth in facility and construction investment and private spending. The Economic Green Book released by the Ministry of Economy and Finance on Friday showed that while inflation is slowing and semiconductor exports are increasing, external conditions are continuing to contribute to economic uncertainties.
Economic uncertainties continue with geopolitical tensions in the Middle East and the war in Ukraine, and there are mixed expectations of improvement in the IT industry and concerns about a weakening global recovery.
December 2023 saw an overall growth of 5.1% in exports compared to the same month the year before, on the back of a recovery in South Korea's tech industry. Outbound shipments of chips increased by 13% on year, while ship and car exports jumped by 47% and 18% respectively. South Korea's exports performed well generally in the final month of 2023, as more than half of the country's 15 key export sectors saw a rise. The start of 2024 also saw a rebound in exports to China for the first time in 20 months. Consumer sentiment also showed an improvement, with the Consumer Sentiment Index rising by more than 2 points compared to November. The on-year increase for consumer prices recorded in December was the lowest seen since July at 3.2%. That being said, retail sales, a key gauge of private spending, fell by 0.3% on year. Retail sales in South Korea have been declining since the second quarter of last year, and while consumer sentiment was high in December, the government predicted that it was the major discount events for vehicles and other items that contributed to the high CSI. The price of fruit led an upsurge in prices, with oil prices on a downward trend in line with falling global crude oil prices. Facility and construction investment saw a decline on year in November, while production slowed for the service industry. The Finance Ministry said it would continue to manage potential risks, such as real estate project financing, and prioritize recovering price stability. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
Auto sales by Hyundai and Kia in the U.S. market hit a new high last year. According to company calculations, some 1.65 million vehicles were sold in America in 2023, up roughly 12% on year, a record high in annual sales there. The milestone is being linked to greater demand for eco-friendly vehicles, as well as recreational vehicles and the luxury brand Genesis. Also in the U.S., consumer prices there rose higher than expected in December on the back of housing and healthcare expenses. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
U.S. consumer prices rose 0.3% in December, higher than the market expectation of 0.2%. On a 12-month basis, U.S. CPI rose 3.4%, also exceeding market expectations of 3.2%. Core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, also rose 0.3% for the month and 3.9% year-on-year. However, the on-year core reading was the lowest since May 2021. The larger-than-expected gains in consumer prices come on the back of rising shelter prices and healthcare. Shelter prices rose 0.5% for the month and accounted for more than half the core CPI increase. On year, shelter costs rose 6.2%, or roughly two-thirds of the rise in inflation. The U.S. Fed believes significant progress has been made in stabilizing prices, but the current interest rate level will have to be maintained for the time being. However, Fed and market consensus has been split on the number of rate cuts in 2024. While the Fed believes there will be 3 rate cuts in the year, markets expect 6 rate cuts this year. Meanwhile, on the first day of Bitcoin ETF trading in the U.S. on Thursday, prices of Bitcoin rose sharply before dropping back down. According to American cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase, the price of Bitcoin exceeded $49,000 on some exchanges in the early trading period, but fell back down to the $46,000 range later in the afternoon. Citing experts, a CNBC report said that Bitcoin prices will go down for the time being due to profit-taking. The second largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization, Ethereum, also saw a sharp increase in its price. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission approved the listing and trading of Bitcoin spot ETF, with trading beginning on the New York Stock Exchange on Thursday. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, at this year's Consumer Electronics Show, aside from the buzz generated by Korea's big businesses, a number of its smaller counterparts are gaining quite a bit of attention for their innovations. Here's our business correspondent, Lee Soo-jin.
The Consumer Electronics Show 2024 has returned in full force. And South Korea is making its presence known with the third most companies participating this year.
The energy is so, full and excitement, and I think everybody's just wondering, like, what are we going to discover? What's new? What's exciting? And in particular, for me, it's what do global companies bring?
With AI taking center stage at this year's CES, Samsung revealed at the event the AI-integrated revamped robot companion, Bali. The new and improved Bali has built-in projectors that can stream phone calls and cooking videos onto the walls of people's homes. Another key theme was mobility, or more specifically, air mobility, as flying cars stole the show. Supernal, Hyundai Motors' advanced air mobility company, unveiled the prototype for its latest electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicle that is expected to be up and running by 2028. But it's not just big-name South Korean companies that are attracting attention, as a record number of South Korean startups were awarded innovation awards. Local startups also emphasize the importance of advanced technologies.
We were able to win innovation awards in both the drones and unmanned systems and the human security for all categories, because the marine salvage and recovery market is becoming increasingly influenced by the robotics market.
Sheco is a startup that develops environmental solutions, and its aquatic cleaning drone uses a rotor to direct water inside the device, where it separates the pollutants with mesh filters. It then discharges the purified water back into the ocean. Another startup that won an innovation award is The Little Cat, a digital pet healthcare company. It took home the accolade for its device that measures body composition in cats. The app shows various information such as the weight, BMI, fat and protein level, and recommends cat food based on the data. And for these startups, CES is important because it opens the door to more business opportunities.
We've already had buyers and distributors from all over the world contact us thanks to CES.
With CES drawing to a close, there's no doubt that South Korean companies have once again helped provide a closer look into the future of consumer technology. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And strawberry farmers here opting to expand their cultivation of certain strawberry varieties to allow for greater choice and competitiveness. Our Chung Won-ju explains.
The Kingsberry strawberry is known for its subtle peach aroma and juiciness, while the Alta King variety is large and tangy, appealing to middle-aged consumers. The latter is also suitable for export because they are firm and their sugar content quickly increases even when picked at 50% ripeness.
Compared to Solhyang, they're harvested about a month earlier. Since strawberries aren't available at that time, they can be sold at a higher price, which greatly benefits the growers.
Currently, 82% of strawberries in South Korea are the Solhyang variety. While Solhyang sweetness makes them popular, there's a need for variety to align with diverse consumer preferences. To address this, the Rural Development Administration conducted a project in 2023 distributing new strawberry varieties like Kumsil, Highberry, and Alta King to 40 farms across 16 districts. Compared to Solhyang, these new varieties have increased income by more than 6%, with 85% of growers expressing satisfaction.
As consumer taste diversifies, this diversification project is an opportunity to present consumers with lots of varieties instead of confining them to a single type.
Applying the cut-flowering grafting technique, which simultaneously cuts and roots offspring from the mother plant, has increased strawberry yield significantly.
The advantage lies in receiving and planting strawberry seedlings all at once. So I think the biggest advantage is that strawberries can age at a constant rate.
The cultivation area for strawberries has decreased since 2010 due to the aging rural population and abnormal temperatures. The Rural Development Administration plans to focus on developing new strawberry varieties and implementing innovative technologies to address labor shortages while appealing to consumer tastes. 정은주, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In Papua New Guinea, the Prime Minister declared a 14-day state of emergency in the country's capital on Thursday after at least 16 people were killed in rioting. Papua New Guinea authorities reported on Thursday that 9 people died in the capital Port Moresby, with a further 7 killed in the city of Lae amid widespread looting and arson in riots which began on Wednesday. Prime Minister James Marape said on Thursday that more than 1,000 soldiers are on standby to step in whatever necessary as shops and cars were torched and looted. He also suspended Papua New Guinea's chief of police and top officials in the finance and treasury departments. Police and public sector workers went on a strike on Wednesday over a pay cut, which the government claimed to be an administrative glitch. The unrest follows the growing tension over high unemployment and rising costs. In Poland's capital, Warsaw, tens of thousands of opposition supporters gathered outside the country's parliament on Thursday in protest against the new liberal government's change to state media and imprisonment of 2 former ministers. President Andrzej Duda, an ally of the ousted populist Law and Justice Party, said on Thursday that he had started the procedures to pardon the 2 former ministers who were jailed this week for abuse of power. The new pro-European government, led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, has been reversing some policies of its populist predecessor. Germany's foreign minister on Thursday criticized China's aggressive actions in the South China Sea, saying that it violates the rights of other countries like the Philippines. Germany's top diplomat, Annalena Baerbock, held talks on Thursday with Philippines President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and other top officials on a 2-day official visit. She said that Germany was prepared to help de-escalate growing tensions and set up mechanisms for peaceful resolutions of disputes. China claims sovereignty over almost the entirety of the South China Sea, cutting into the exclusive economic zones of Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. Beijing has rejected The Hague's Permanent Court of Arbitration 2016 ruling that China's claims have no legal basis. The Vatican, on Thursday, unveiled plans for the restoration of the monumental baldachin, the canopy over the main altar of St. Peter's Basilica. The $770,000 restoration and conservation project, funded entirely by the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic fraternal organization, marks the first comprehensive work on the structure in 250 years. The 10-story tall baldachin was commissioned by Pope Urban VIII and created by Gian Lorenzo Bernini in the 17th century. The Vatican has pledged to complete the work on Bernini's masterpiece in time for Pope Francis's 2025 Jubilee. Kim Xiang, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Air quality has improved in most of central parts of the country, but Gyeongsang-Namdo province and nearby areas will be trapped under high levels of ultrafine dust through the latter half of the day today. The air quality should improve later in the day, though, with northwesterly winds blowing in. We are supposed to have the coldest temperatures of the season around this time, but we have more days with polluted air with mild temperatures. This weekend looks to be another bearable one, even with normal air quality. But just beware, there's a mix of rain and snow in the forecast on Sunday in many places. Sunny skies are welcomed by many. Meanwhile, eastern parts of the country are quite windy today. Seoul gets up to 4 degrees Celsius, Busan topping out at 12 degrees this afternoon. Sunday's precipitation will bring colder air to the country early next week, but there will not be a major cold snap to worry about. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
And those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session, so do stay with us.